Okay, so I've been asked several times to take a look at the cast of the Harry Potter franchise, and I'm going to start obviously with Harry, with Daniel Radcliffe. This is Dan as a baby, and as a young child. I do feel that this looks very feminine as a young child, so let's keep looking. Again, this is a very feminine looking face, just kind of delicate, even small features, softness in the eyes. Again here, this doesn't feel like a boy to me. This energy is just definitely not male. Look at this kind of feminine looking skin quality and the shape of the eyes, the kind of glow, sparkle in the eyes, much more feminine. A small mouth, even small features spaced closely together, more common on females. And look at that, there's a female Q angle, very obvious female Q angle. The hips are equal to the shoulders, so that's a female shoulder to hip ratio. I do believe his final height is between 5'4" and 5'5", which is definitely shorter than average for a male. Look at how the feet step more one in front of the other rather than side by side. Females tend to have a gait like this because of the way that the legs angle in from the hips down to the knee. The arms angle out from the shoulder to make space for the wider hips. It feels very feminine. This just looks very soft, it doesn't feel like a man. And again, look at these curvy legs, and look at the way he's walking. See, the way that we have the knee kind of angling outward, and down here, same thing, the knee angles outward. This hip is being pushed backward and out to the side. This is the kind of FTM sway, skating around trying to make their legs look more side by side like a man. It's just very unnatural looking, and if you notice, I believe this is his father. Father's doing the same thing with the legs. Interesting. Biological males walk with their feet more side by side, and they walk with their toes generally pointing straight, their knees pointing straight, or maybe just a little bit outward. But the main difference between that and the FTM walk is you can tell the curve on the legs is very feminine on the FTMs. And also they have to sway a lot in their hips, they have to move around more in order to try and approximate this male gait. Notice again, the width of the hips is equal to the shoulder joints. Look at that, look at these curvy thighs, this is not a man. Legs go one in front of the other. Short little neck, just a very small, dainty person. Again, look at these round, full hips, these curvy legs. Definite female Q angle here. These legs are obviously female. It's a very short person as well. Some men could be short, but generally not this short. The arms do angle out from the shoulder. Looks like we have about a female arm length. On males, the wrist generally reaches about to crotch level, whereas on females it's generally around the palm. This can vary depending on ancestry. Jaw does look significantly stronger now, and you can see this facial hair, but taking testosterone over a long period of time will help grow. Facial hair can help develop an Adam's apple, will elongate the lower half of the face, can help development of the brow ridge, can increase cheekbones. It grows the size of the nose, develops body hair, fills in the torso, or rather, not taking estrogen, having estrogen blockers makes the torso fill in. So many changes can be brought through hormone blocking and through replacement of hormones. Again, look at these curvy legs. This is very, very strange for a man to have such curvy legs, again with the short arms. Overall just small. And, I mean, what a strange feeling in this face. This doesn't feel like a man at all. Like I said, taking testosterone can develop body hair. And on most FTMs, we often see the development of the Adonis belt. It's not something that's actually controlled by having a Y chromosome, it's just a structural development. But it does seem that FTMs usually seem to get them. Maybe they use procedures to get them, or maybe it's just a result of the differing levels of tissues, fats, muscles, everything caused by taking hormones and working out and things. But whatever the case, seeing an Adonis belt on someone does not make them male. On a female, generally, I don't think I've really seen any females who have one, especially not one this defined. You might see the development of the muscle in a woman, but because of her subcutaneous body fat level, generally it won't look this cut, sort of. But again, this photo looks like it's been photoshopped, so who knows how deep it really is. The chest looks very tiny, small and shrunken in. You can see there is the waist indentation above the navel. But after that point, a bulge of the oblique, but then the hips continue outward past that point, meaning this person has round female hips. This isn't just development of trapezius muscles, this is the back curving in at a high point where we have the waist above the navel, we've got the curving hips again past that point, we have got pelvic tilt at the front. This is a girl. I seem to recall some kind of stage production that he did as well, where he disrobed. And I just want to say that just means that the elite have these kinds of procedures down to a stage where, you know, they can do that. They can have people go completely nude in front of an audience, and they may not even notice. It's common knowledge that the military tends to have technology that's at least like 10, maybe 30 years more advanced than what they give to the regular population. And so shouldn't it stand to reason also that the elite will have more advanced procedures that they use amongst themselves than what they will show to the public? For the public already there are a number of procedures for the bottom surgeries for people, even, you know, transitioning post-pubescently, but with this person, with other such people, obviously they would have been put on hormone blockers so they didn't develop secondary sex characteristics of their biological gender. And then if you begin with different kinds of procedures and work on someone from a young age, it's much more believable than the people who transition post-pubescently. As obviously someone who hasn't developed sex characteristics of their biological gender, they're going to be more passable as the opposite gender just because they haven't developed like that. In any case, there are a lot of advanced prosthetics and there are surgical procedures, so just because someone has the correct anatomy in that region down south for the gender they're presenting as, it doesn't actually mean that they are that gender, because, well, obviously there are sexual reassignment surgeries to mimic the natural organs of the opposite gender. Waist indentation above the navel, wider at the hips, overall just a very small, compact, little person because it is biologically female. There's really not a lot of Adam's apple development. Sometimes with the FTMs they'll have more developed Adam's apples depending on how well it grows over the years, and then also some of them can receive implants. There are many procedures for approximating natural features of the opposite gender. Again, this looks very doctored image. There's something very blurry and kind of smooth about all of this shading and stuff. It doesn't really look quite natural, so something's been done to the image anyway. But what hasn't been done is changing the width of the hips, which is quite enormous. Again, this one appears to have done the regular FTM trick of building up the deltoid muscles. When you build up this muscle, then it makes the shoulders look wider, which is necessary with FTMs with typically having wide hips and narrower shoulders. But if you follow where the actual joints in the shoulders are, you match them up to where the widest point in the hips is, you can tell it's the same size on these people. There does appear to be a shoulder slope. Whether the shoulders slope or not is dependent on ancestry, as well as typically males will have sort of straighter shoulders, and females will have more curved, sloped shoulders. See, and working out and everything, it can increase the appearance of the upper body through muscle development, but you can see the waist is here, and then there's a continual curve and expansion past that point to wide female hips, and there is an obvious female Q angle on these curvy legs. Again, the small upper body, the waist indentation above the navel, the wider hips past that point. The brow is essentially straight. Because the head is being tilted upward a little bit here, it looks like it's more sloped. But again, depending on ancestry, some people do have more slope to the brow, some females even do, and some males actually have straighter brows. It depends entirely upon where the ancestry is from. Now we notice there isn't much of a brow ridge. The jaw is fairly strong, but there is quite a lot of softness around here. Females tend to have more soft, kind of fatty tissue around this area, around the jaw and under the chin and stuff, even when they're small, thin people. Again, there's just a little bit of a brow ridge, not much, and you know, the soft, curving look at the jaw, more of a slope to the neck, not a whole lot going on with the Adam's apple, looks like pretty small ears. The skull is fairly hefty, but there are some females with larger skulls, and some people have mentioned that some children who were born with them through in vitro fertilization, they had a larger skull, and there's also studies on autistic boys generally having larger skulls, so there are a lot of things that can affect the size of the skull, and sometimes we do see FTMs with large skulls. Now again, you can tell there's too much width to these hips and too much curve on the thighs. It's not natural for a man. Looks just pretty soft. More typical for a female. Looks like it has subcutaneous fat levels of a female. When you're not looking at an angle, like in this shot, we're looking from a sort of sideways angle. And then if you see a photo where it's straight on, you can see what they're doing, what he's doing with the hips, where he pushes one leg way out, the toes on both feet are angled out, the knees are angled out. They do that, and they kind of skate and move around to make it look like they don't have as much of a female Q angle as they do. Now I've got to say, I generally don't see men who are shorter than their girlfriends or wives. You know, maybe it happens sometimes, and there's no problem with it if people are fine with it, if that's what they like. Or if they happen to fall in love with someone, I guess, and that's just how it ends up being. But I do see these kinds of couples with celebrities way more often than I do with regular people, because I've never seen a regular couple, as far as I can remember anyway, that had a shorter man than a woman. It's unusual, isn't it? I've also noticed Daniel Radcliffe has that kind of look around the facial hair that seems to be quite common on FTMs, where it seems kind of like wispier or softer somehow. I can't really explain it, but it feels like when you look at it, the texture seems like it's not quite the same as a biological male. It's kind of wispier, fluffier somehow. Look at that again. If you ignore the built-up deltoids and just follow the joints, you have equal joints. This leg is stepping farther backward, so we can't see it as well. Female Q angle, thighs angle inward, arms angle outward, neck is short. Again, arms angle outward. What are they doing with the feet? This hip is being pushed backward and outward. The knees are being angled outward. Again, the jaw is fairly wide. It could be facial work, or it just could be the ancestry, because actually I think I might have read that one of his parents was I think Russian or Polish Jews, and people from that region of the world, including the females, often have squarer faces, but you notice that there aren't really jutting cheekbones, there's no gauntness to the face, you know, there's not much in the brow ridge. This is still more like a female from that region, mixed in with whatever else he was mixed in with, something presumably more British. Again, the eyes are spaced quite close together, there's not much of a gap between the nose and the mouth. The nose appears larger than I believe it would have been if he hadn't been on testosterone. It's enlarged the nose. Again, the lips are both they're about equal in size. They're not very large lips. Typically females will have fuller lips, but especially in the Caucasian race, it's possible for women to have quite thin lips as well. Now look at that. Look at what he's doing with the legs again. When you see people walking like this, and so many photos of male celebrities walking like this, you don't see natural men walking like this. The hips are, pushed outward, the knees pushed outward, the toes angle outward. You can tell that there's less mass up top, thin waist, wide hips that match the shoulders, and on Rupert Grint you can tell there's a lot of curve going on in the thighs as well, mass in this area, whereas on Emma Watson there's something very strange about the way that she's walking with very straight looking legs in comparison to these two. I will look at Emma and Rupert further in the future as well. I'm not sure exactly why a lot of the Harry Potter people seem to be associating with Matthew Broderick and Sarah Jessica Parker. I'm not really sure about that, but I've seen a few pictures of people with them. But anyway, there is more of a point to the chin, even though this is a square, kind of strong facial structure. It does look more like a natural female's square facial structure put on testosterone. Again, the upper body, the ribcage, this looks very small for a natural male. Granted, this is a short person, so there's that, but the waist is so small and high above the navel. The hips go outward past that point. Delicate collarbones, you can't really see them much even though the person appears to be quite slim. The arms look to be very short, the upper arm. The mouth is small. I just don't see men with this kind of appearance in the face. It's very... There's not much going on in the necks in either one of them. Just this... If you just look in the eyes, this does not feel like a man. There's a difference between male and female energy. It's not changed by anything else. It's not changed by personality. It's not changed by life experiences. You can read all of that in the eyes, because the eyes are the windows to the soul. But at the same time, there's always an underlying energy of what the person is, if they're male or female. It's very different and distinct, and a lot of people recognize it. It's difficult for people to recognize because it's been changed. Our perception has been changed so much because we've been seeing the wrong energy in the wrong people due to the media showing us so many people who are inverted without, owning up to that fact. Look at that, even though the jaw is square, see how it kind of curves and angles more smoothly? There's nothing sharp, jutting. It's not much in the neck, This looks very much like a girl who's been transgendered, because that's what it is. This soft look in the eyes, this is not a male look. Again, what's going on with the hips? Why does it look like it's so uncomfortable to walk? Men don't look like this when they walk. Neither do natural women when they're not trying to change the way their legs look. So I do believe that Daniel Radcliffe is a female to male transgender, put on hormone blockers, and raised in a generational satanic family who believes in the Baphomet, and thus they transgender their children. It's done for religious reasons. It sounds crazy if you haven't researched it, but if you've researched it, you'll find out what's going on behind the scenes, as much as we're able to anyway. It's not like they broadcast this on the mountaintops. Not yet, anyway. And actually, as I've been researching these actors, I do seem to be finding that the original child cast, it seems highly, highly likely that they are inverted. That in a way that makes sense, because so many of these satanic families, they're also involved with witchcraft. Freemasonry and witchcraft, they go together. And it's interesting that this franchise was really promoting the idea of witchcraft as something that's sort of benign. It's kind of trying to tell people that it's not real, and it's not dangerous. It's the message behind these things, sort of making a whole generation of children, and every ensuing generation, because these stories, they're very enjoyable stories. Children love them. Even now, children read them all the time. And what it has done is it's really normalized the idea of witchcraft, generational satanic cults. The religion that they hold, teaches them essentially that it's sort of the transhuman experience. It's not just transgendering, it's not just simply changing a gender, it's becoming more than human by taking on aspects of both genders and thus gaining powers similar to godhood. They believe is an androgynous god, the Baphomet, and that's why they attempt to model it by inverting their children. Stories about the occult and witchcraft, they often seem to have a high concentration of inverted people, and that would be because it all fits together, it's all part of this religion. Anyway, after I finish talking here, I'm gonna just put in a little clip of Graham Norton. Graham Norton seems to enjoy little coded disclosures in his shows and potentially little humiliation rituals. Anyway, there's a reason why people say things that they say on different shows and stuff, and yes, I said they don't shout things from the mountaintops, but they sure do tell us in different ways now and again. Anyway, Daniel Radcliffe looks like FTM, and that's that.
We've outed Daniel Radcliffe as a time traveller. Actually, not once, twice. We found Daniel again in another era. There he is.